I've mentioned a few times that here at Outside we love Salewa footwear. It's incredibly popular because it's comfy, reliable and does exactly what it says on the tin. And the latest shoe is just the same. This is the Salewa Wildfire NXT GTX. So as you can see, I've got the men's and women's here, but I've unsurprisingly been using the men's quite a bit recently and really liking it, and there's lots to tell you about it as ever. So Wildfire has been in Salewa's range for quite a while, and this newest one, the NXT, really revamped what they've known so well, like a really good climbing approach shoe, so that means walking to the crag. But what I think is a bit better about these and some others we've done in the past is actually, one, it's lighter and lots of other things, but two, it also crosses that bit between trail walking and actually climbing, scrambling, much better than other shoes I've used. I think the first thing that was really cool when we saw these is how the younger and the older people in the shop all think they look really cool, and there was quite a buzz about them. Customers kind of agree as well. But also, they're incredibly comfortable. There's quite a lot of cushioning going on. A lot of old approach shoes, they'd be quite solid and flat, and obviously good for scrambling and things like that, but not particularly good on harder trails and walking around on long days in them. This could certainly sell to the walker or the climber or the scrambler. So being a good shoe for all environments, I think one of the most noticeable things is the sole. I think it's really, really well designed, because obviously climbing shoes versus walking shoes, it's quite hard to get it exactly right how you'd like it, because when you're on the wet mud, you want some grip, and then when you're on the rock, you want it as slick as possible for the most friction available. And they've got a really good compromise here. The rubber compound they've used is the tried and tested Vibram Mega Grip. So that works incredibly well on all terrains, particularly sort of rock, but it works well on wet rock as well, which is quite nice. I really like the pattern they've got. So obviously at the front, they've got totally slick climbing zone, which has worked well today. I've actually done a little bit of climbing and scrambling around on the gritstone. Really, really sticky. I actually wore them the other night while bouldering in the Lake Street, and believe it or not, I was just warming up in them because quite an easy problem, and it felt really nice to just be in my comfy shoes to warm up. Moving down the sole, you can see there's quite a deep lug here at the front for an approach shoe, that is, which grips really well on the mud and wet mud and things like that, and also on the rock as well. But as you move to the heel, obviously the chevrons sort of change direction to allow you sort of braking and grip that way. So when you're going down a hill, it's going to slow you down nicely. And then one of the most noticeable features about this shoe, which I've really liked, is this sort of scoop at the back here. So as we come down hills, we always end up hitting our heel like that first and going down, and normally it's flat at the bottom of a shoe. You can destroy the back end of a shoe quite easily, and you're not really getting any rubber and grip as you descend. So they thought about that, wrapped it all the way around and continued that mega grip. So you've got grip there, and it helps with durability as well. And it's really noticeably sort of rolled down in it really nicely. So yeah, I found those really sticky, but so far proving nice and durable as well. So while I'm talking about the way it walks, there's something you can't see that's really cool in here. There's a nice TPU plate running most of the length of the shoe. So what that does is it gives you, one, a bit of stability so you feel nice and secure, but also a little bit of rebound as well. So as you're rolling off the hill like that and then taking off at the front, it'll sort of project you further forward. So one nice way of thinking about it is it makes the easy stuff like walking easier, so you can save your energy for when it gets harder. Kind of quite like that thought. Now moving up the shoe, the uppers are really interesting. So what we've got here is you've got matrix, which we've seen on some harnesses and things like that, which is incredibly thin and durable, and also it's mixed with Kevlar as well, and that's a seamless construction, so there's nothing really to catch on there, and using those two materials together makes an incredible sort of really durable but lightweight upper. Some traditional old sort of approach shoes would just use leather to get that durability, but of course leather is quite heavy, and also it can get a bit sweaty as well. I think that's really well thought out, because particularly with this extra TPU toe patch as well, this area on approach shoe can get absolutely trashed. It's quite nice that, you know, you can keep the weight down, but durability will be about as high as it can get. That TPU rand at the front nicely protects the toe there and then comes all the way up the foot. They haven't put it on this side because generally it's here where it gets scuffed, so that saves a little bit of weight as well. Now this is the Gore-Tex version, which I think is perfect. I mean, it's been a pretty dry summer so far, but even today we've just walked through bogs and walked through a stream, even put it under a little waterfall, which is quite nice. And because it's the Gore-Tex Invisifit, as they call it, which is not constructed in that sort of booty sense like they used to make, it feels much thinner and you don't really sort of feel quite as clunky in it. Certainly feels a bit more breathable for it. I don't know if that's in my head, but it seems to work really well. And I quite like keeping my feet dry when I'm going to the crag. What I also really like about that is I end up climbing particularly often when it's really cold. And obviously having Gore-Tex in there does keep them a little bit warmer, particularly when they're drier as well. There's the obvious thing with these where they've got the pull cord at the back here, which I think's just got to be there, hasn't it? It's a climbing approach shoe. You're going to clip it to your harness, and these are so nice and light. I'll definitely be doing that for my multi-pitching. Now, looking around this shoe, there's a few other things you'll see that are on a lot of Soleil shoes, and why wouldn't they put it on? Because everyone loves it on all their other shoes and boots, so they've added it here. So they've got their 3F tension system, which basically means when you tension your laces here, you've got this plastic insert here, it wraps all the way around the heel. That helps you clamp your heel down, particularly when you're standing on your edges or walking long distances. That works really well. One thing I would say is that it does feel quite stable and secure when you're trying them on here around your ankle. At first, that was a little bit stiff and I was worried that might be painful. I've only had these a few days and already that's broken and feels nice. So if you do try them on, do bear that in mind. It's there to give durability instead of collapsing really quickly. It does mean it can feel quite stiff out the box. If you look inside the shoe, you see this CFF. Now, again, they've done that on a few other models. It works really well. That is custom fit footbed. So I've talked about this before, but you get basically 2 different footbeds with this shoe. And here they are. So this works really well. And actually, I think I've used it more in this shoe than any other, and I'll explain why. So if I was using these for a long walk or a long approach, something like that, I want them to be comfy, I want room around the toe box, and I want a bit of space to wiggle my toes, things like that. And so I'd wear this insole. That is incredibly comfortable, and it does mean, as someone with quite a wide foot, I've still got space at the forefoot, wiggle my toes, I feel nice and relaxed in those, and it's got nice cushioning on the heel, and that works really well. What that does mean is I don't quite feel like I could climb particularly hard in them because there's too much space at the toe, and not really that precise if it's on small edges. You can bring in the extra insert, which quite simply sits underneath that footbed, and what that does is takes 2 mil of volume out of the shoe all the way across. And not only just sort of all the depth of it, you can see here with these extra little fins wrapped around the side, that means it sort of squeezes your foot a little bit more so that you can actually just feel a bit more precise at the forefoot and edge a little bit better. Now, obviously that's just how I'm using it. If you've just got a narrow foot, you can leave that there all the time. If you've got a really wide foot, you'll probably never use it. If you swap between winter thick socks, you might have just one. If it's skinny summer socks, you use both. If you don't like the edges, trim them off. All these sort of things means the versatility is there, and I think it's brilliant. I think I'd even consider walking into a long scrambly climb or something like that in just these and add these at the base of the climb. And obviously, without saying, it's incredibly comfortable. Just for a bit of information, I nearly always take a size 11 in shoes or a EU 46, and that's the same in these. If I wanted to climb hard in them, I actually think I'd go down half a size. However, I don't really recommend that. If you're going down a size to climb better in your shoes, why aren't you putting your rock shoes on? It's clearly got to a grade where you should be in your rock shoes, so give that some thought. Just another bit of information as well for your own reference, more talked about in the running shoe world, but this has a 10 mil drop. So the difference between the front and the back is 10 mil, so you are slightly angled, which is pretty normal for a walking shoe, which I think feels incredibly comfortable in this. I think this is just going to be mega popular, whether you're walking, whether you're climbing, you're approaching, you're scrambling, even just kicking around in them. It does actually say on the Soleil website, they're from like door to summit. And I kind of get it. I'd get out in the pub in them. I'd definitely go scrambling in them, and I'll wear them as my multi-pitch approach shoe. Please make sure you give us a like and subscribe below if you want to see more content like this.